She said she kept a pan of water on the top of it all the time, and before they handled me, they'd wash their hands in Lysol water. And so on the 24th of July, 1934, I was brought out to introduce to the rest of the family. And I made it, thanks to my mother and my dad. They were hard-working women, hard-working men and women. They really worked hard. My mother used to can over 1,200 bottles of fruit a year. We were poor in the Depression. Everybody was poor. We didn't realize we were that poor, but I like to say, you know, we couldn't even afford to pay attention. And I didn't. But anyway, when I was about 5 or 6, we used to go to church, go to Sunday school in the morning. Then we'd come home at lunch and go to a sacrament meeting at 7 o'clock at night. And in the summer, several times my dad would take me with him, and we'd go out to the France Payne service station in the garage on the corner of 5th South and 3rd West, gas the old 29 Chevy up. And one time I went out there and there was a fellow building a building. And I'd never seen a building being built before. This is the first one. And I went over and stood and watched the guy, and he stopped and came over and talked to me and introduced himself. His name was Wallace. I told him I was Drew, and he gave me a piece of candy. So every time I got a chance, I went out and went with him, went to see him, and I saw the progress of the building. And finally completed. It was called the Wagon Wheel Inn. And I can remember the last time I remember seeing him. I went out there and the building was complete. And I walked over and the door was open on a Sunday. And Wallace was in there cleaning up the place after the Saturday night thing. And he invited me in and had me sit up at the bar. And he went behind the bar and got an almond joy candy bar. He took one half of it, and I ate the other half. And I said, I don't remember, that's the first almond joy I ever had, and I still like almond joys. But a fellow named Judd Davies, everything he did, he wrote a poem. Now, Judd's mother was Martin Hanson's daughter, and Martin Hanson's mother was Grandpa Rasmussen's sister, Gertrude. And this Judd Davies, everything he did, he wrote a poem. Well, Judd's father was also come through the Sorensons, my grandmother's, on my grandmother's side. So he was related, I find out recently that he was related on both sides. But he wrote this poem about the Wagon Wheel Inn. He said, I was sitting in the Wagon Wheel Inn when Stan Maycock come a staggering in. Then Carl Robinson ordered the beer. Now he had already had enough, I fear. The little black trembled like a little barfly, was drinking beer till I thought he'd die. Then came Peg Warner and Fat Buck Dane, both acting as though they're lame. Claude and Vid Carling were talking hot wheat when Turvey did a step dance on Lord Rogers' feet. Alvin Bass Brunson ordered beer by the bottle, already so full neither one could waddle. Robin Jackson ordered beer by the glass, he's just trying to keep up with old Newt Rice. Saw Carl Rice play black, had for a booth way down in the back. I gotta remember some of these names. There's a lot of names in it, but Tom Stevenson was just getting hardy when Truman Ashby broke up the party. Now all the names in this are purely fictitious, so if yours is here, don't get vicious. So it's due to us drunk, to me I fear, we're nicking all Wallace Robinson's beer. Well, when I got that poem, I didn't realize this Wallace was a Robinson, and he found out his relation to me through my mother's side. And about 3 years ago, about this time of year, we were having a ward supper, and I was down at the pavilion behind the courthouse cooking corn, and Joe Jackson and Charles Jackson came by, and they asked me what I was doing. I said, we're going to have a ward supper here tonight, a part of the supper. Charles said, what ward do you belong to? I said, the 4th ward. Oh, he said, the wagon wheel in, huh? When we were kids, we only had three wards, and if you belonged to the 4th ward, it was the wagon wheel in. So anyway, he said, well, Wallace Robinson, I told him the point at that time, and he said, Wallace Robinson was my uncle. And I asked him, I said, whatever happened to Wallace Robinson? He said he was one of those brave young men in 1944 and early 45 that was at the Battle of the Bulge, and that's where he lost his life, the Battle of the Bulge. And it kind of, I always considered him as a friend of mine. This Judd Davies, he wrote a lot of poems, and I come to find out that he had a brother named Forrest. I didn't know Forrest, but he's related to him on his mother's side and on father's side, and he also lost his life at the Battle of the Bulge. So I think of these men every time. Donald and I worked hard on the farm. When we were kids, we were probably about 15. He was probably about 14, 15, and we were 16. And Dad hired a guy to work for him, and the guy asked him, he said, what do you expect of me? I expect to just keep up with my boys. And don't you think he knew how to make boys work? And we worked that guy half to death. We were just, he only expected us to work a half a day, and he didn't really care which 12 hours that was. So. But I had a good life. We had bicycles. We had a pasture about 5th west. We lived at 3rd west. We had the 2nd west. We had to drive the cows down that pasture. Of course, it was right by the junkyard. And we didn't have a mountain bicycle. We just went over to the junkyard and found parts. And we always had a bicycle. We made it out of old bike parts. We enjoyed it. So we were lucky. We could fix things. And then when we were young, we could harness up the horses, do a little work, you know. If it was hard to get some grain in, something we could drag the grain into the barn with the horses. So we were pretty lucky. We had to milk cows. In the summer we'd take the cows down to the farm and pasture them. And we'd go down there and we'd throw a gallon of grain in an old thing for the cows to eat the grain, and one of us get on each side of that cow and milk just as fast as we could before we finished the grain. And we had about 39 cows. Anyway, we were sometimes late in school because we didn't get the cows milk on time. But I enjoyed school. I was small for my age. One time, I think Donald outweighed me about 80 pounds. When I graduated from high school, I think I weighed 105 pounds. So
I think he still does.
And my dad used to say, how come this boy he's so big and he's so little? Dad said, well, I just run him to the self-feed.
And you see who gets there first, yeah?
So anyway, we go walk to school, and one deer hunt, Bill McBride hired us to milk his cow. No, Vance Wilson.
Yeah, Vance, yeah.
Hired us to milk his cow. And they went deer hunting, and we'd go up to give us a dime of milking.
Yeah.
And when the deer hunt was over, Mrs. Wilson, Jane Wilson says, these boys are gonna continue milking the cows, because when they bring the milk in, there's no green in the bucket. So anyway, then Newt, his wife decided we'd milk there, so we each had cow to milk every morning and night, and get 20 cents a day. We decided one time we'd go to the movie. Didn't tell Dad we went to the movie, and gosh, we about had disheartened and talked to the old guy and come pulled our ears and kicked us out. Wouldn't give us a running back, would they?
No.
So anyway, we learned that we had the mind, so. But I really appreciate my dad. He was a hard worker, and I can remember when he got old and couldn't work anymore. And we went to church, and he didn't come home, and kept the keys away. Mom kept the keys away from the car. But the old tractor was gone. We looked all over for him. Finally, he came back. He'd been out around the farm driving that tractor. So he really had to. He was a hard worker, so but he hated to look. He was honorable and honest, and so we really appreciated him, and loved him, and he was good to us. So taught us how to work. Now it's important to work. There's a guy by the name of Glenn Rudd wrote a book called Pure Religion, and it's about the welfare system. And in that book he states the word love is in the scriptures about 400 times. But the word work is in the scriptures over 700 times. So it's important to teach your kids how to work and enjoy it. So, but I appreciate you putting up with me, and I don't know whether I took too much time or not. But
Perfect.
I'm going to do one more point by Judd Davies, so maybe two. This is a poem written by him at the start of the World War II. He said, "The boys have all vanished, but there are very few of us here, and the rest of us will probably be gone before we see another year. One group went with the National Guard, and the rest of them were sent away to go and fight for our freedom and bring peace again someday. It used to be you could walk down the street and someone would say, 'Hello, pal,' or you see some other young feller walking along with his gal. But now the streets are deserted and empty, except for a few of the old, who are getting tired and weary, but no lift their ends so bold. But maybe someday these streets will clamor with happy young fellows' shouts, when this bloody war is over and the boys have been turned out. But maybe some of us won't be there to let our homecoming cry. But surely their spirit will go down the street, for others' memories will never die." Judd Davies wrote that, and he lost a brother, and I think of Wallace Robinson when I do that. So. But Judd Davies, everything he did was a poem. He wrote this letter home. He trained to be an airplane. He was a pretty good mechanic, shade tree mechanic. So they trained him to be an airplane mechanic, sent him to school. This is the point he wrote, the letter he wrote home about where he'd been. He says, "I left the Rocky Mountains, and I went to the Nebraska Plains. From there I went to Illinois, and then to the state of Maine. Now I've seen those eastern cities and the wonderful Great Lakes. But if you read a little more closely, I'm going to tell you what it takes. Now there are only two places I can very safely say. One of them's home, the other's away. Some like these little hills, others like it flat. But if you'll take me back to Utah, where we have more than that," Judd Davies. So appreciate you.
Thank you. Woo-hoo.